All right, we are live. Welcome everybody to our first Clear to Grow. Clear to Grow was created because too many families, including my own, we felt very confused, overwhelmed, embarrassed, about finances. I don't know about you, but no one really taught me a whole bunch about finances, investing, how to budget growing up. We talked a lot about baseball, but we did not talk about budgeting. One of the biggest misconceptions that I had about budgeting was that you had to make money first before you started to budget, or make a certain amount rather. A lot of people think when they hear the budget word is, they don't make enough money, or they're bad with money, or I'll start budgeting when I make more. The truth is, what I found, especially talking with Rebecca, income is rarely the real issue. Structure is. It's being in lending for 20 years, I have seen families that make practically nothing, just amazing savers. And then I've seen families that make a lot of money and they have so much debt, they don't have any savings at all. So the whole point of Clear to Grow is to give people different avenues, different guests to help them grow, save, and become financially independent. Now, to bridge a little bit about Rebecca, I was introduced to Rebecca through Crystal and Lindsay. They are financial planners. They're absolutely amazing. And they work with Rebecca. She helps families with finance strategies. She focuses a lot with police officers, but that's not really why we brought her in here, though, because she can help all families regardless of what you do for a living. So with that, I'm going to hope this works well. I'm going to bring Rebecca to the stage. What's up, Rebecca?
Paul, how's it going?
All right. We even got everything's working. It's going fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to have
my
you.
My husband hooked me up with a whole
Did he?
setup here.
That's
I
awesome.
look super professional.
That's my wife behind me too. She's getting that's all dialed in and stuff. Well, it's really good to have you, Rebecca. Again, I talked a little bit about you when we first met. You told me a little bit about your story, and I was blown away because of what you overcame. So, how did you get into the financial budgeting and financing coaching?
So my educational background is in financial management already, and that's pretty much what I did for the first 15 years of my career. I worked in the public school sector, and I basically managed multi-million-dollar programs, and did all of that. And my husband and I, when we got married back in 2018. And right off the bat, like, we started getting all the things, right? You get the house, and then you get the new cars, and you get the furniture to go in that house, because we didn't own we had our own vehicles, but we didn't own a house before we got married. Yeah. And we got married in our early 30s. And so, we just hit the ground running, because, we were a dual income household. At the time, I was pregnant with our first daughter. And so we just felt like, hey, we've got all this income, like, let's spend it. Let's go. Let's go. It's the American dream, right?
I can relate. Yes. I have a garage that tells me the truth, but go ahead.
Yeah. And so we did that for about 3 years. And by the time I was pregnant with our second daughter, we were really starting to feel the pain of the financial decisions that we had made up to that point. Yeah. And my husband, fortunately, with his profession, had access to a bunch of overtime. Mm-hmm. But he came home one day and he's like, I'm having a hard time understanding why our bank account still looks the same, whether I work 40 hours of overtime in a pay period or I work 0 hours of overtime in a pay period. Like, where is all this money going when I'm working this overtime? And so we sat down and we hopped on. We started with, like, Dave Ramsey. If anybody's familiar with Dave Ramsey and his baby steps. Yeah. That gave us the structure that we needed. And so essentially the first step was, okay, list out all the debt that you have. At that moment, we realized that over the past 3 years, plus, some debt that we had brought into the relationship, but most of it was accumulated during the marriage. was about $120,000 outside of our
Yeah.
home. So that was on top of our home mortgage. And I told my husband, I said, this is why. This is why it feels like our bank account is just draining week after week and we can't keep up with it. And so and what's the interesting thing is being somebody who managed multi-million-dollar budgets, especially government
Right.
budgets, which
Yeah.
always operates on that zero sum budget, right? It's like your budget at the end of the year is zero. It's technically a nonprofit, right? You're not supposed to make a profit. So you're supposed to spend the money that comes in.
Yeah.
And so and I was like, well, that doesn't make sense for personal finance. Like, why?
Right.
Like that's why would anybody do that?
I think
But
that's my household. We're a nonprofit. We spend everything. Hey, just real quick, I have a question for you though, because I remember when I was about 25, when I was first married, we thought I knew we were starting to get into debt, but I didn't realize to the extent the debt was. Was it a shock to you when you realized that when you added it all up, or did you kind of know you were up there? Because I thought we were at about half of what we owed. I was floored. I still remember that pain when I realized how much debt we were in.
Was shocking because we each had like our individual credit cards, and then we each had so all of our debt accounts that were I had my car loan, he had his car loan, I had my credit cards, he had his credit cards. So all of them were kind of separate. So I don't think we really knew what the other person had, even though we're in this marriage, right? The accounts were under individual names. Yeah. And so when we sat down and put everything on paper, it was really shocking. And, when you see an amount like that, it's like, where do you even start?
Yeah. So where did you start? I mean,
where did we start? I'm glad you asked.
Let's start there. That is that's a huge realization, realizing with the income you have, you've created that much debt. Now you essentially have to take the income that you currently have that made the debt and reverse it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? I know you can work overtime and stuff like that as a police officer and stuff like that. Tell us about that journey. Man.
Yeah. So it was kind of a two-pronged approach. So what we did is, we opted to go the snowball method, which is true to Dave Ramsey's baby steps. The only reason why we really got out of the baby steps is because with the stressors of my husband's jobs, and at the time he was working graveyards, so I was working my full-time job during the day, and then I would come home and take care of kids, my two babies, by myself while he was at work at nighttime. So it was a really stressful time just for our relationship.
Yeah.
And so we realized we needed to really take action. And so the easiest way for us was to do the debt snowball. So for those who,
I was going to say, do you mind for those that don't know? Because I actually don't know the baby steps or the snowball. I kind of can guess, but do you mind just briefly telling us what those are?
Yes. So I won't go through all the baby steps because there's 7 of them. It's really the first 3 that are kind of the most pivotal, that'll kind of help guide you through your financial journey. The first one is to make sure that you have a $1,000 emergency fund in place, right? So for many Americans, the statistic is that many Americans cannot pay cash for $1,000 emergency. We have to, pull out the credit card. So that's just kind of baseline. Now, for me personally, just having $1,000 in the savings account never felt comfortable for me. And so ours was definitely higher. So we failed that baby step from the get-go. Baby step number 2, pay off all your debt. And then you use the snowball method. So the snowball method is you make a list of all of your debts from the smallest balance to the highest balance, right? Gotcha. And then what you do is you pay minimums on everything. And then any extra cash that you can scrounge up for the month, you throw that extra cash towards the smallest debt. Okay. And then once that debt's paid off, then everything you were putting towards that debt now rolls on to the next debt. And so that's why it's called a snowball, right? So it's as it starts to go down the hill, the ball gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And by the end of it, you've got this giant snowball that's just wiping your debt out left and right, is the theory, right? The idea around it. Yeah. And so that's what we chose because to be frank, we had 18 individual debt accounts.
Okay. Yeah.
And so just that alone, we were like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of
It's overwhelming.
account
I'm
to
with
get through.
you.
Now,
Yeah.
fortunately, some of them were very small, like $250, $500, 1,000. Like they were on the smaller end.
Yeah.
And so what was really nice about the snowball method is we were able to wipe out like within the first month 4 or 5 of the debts that were on our list. So it was like almost that motivation was like, and that momentum was almost instantaneous for us.
Yeah.
So that was just the structure of how we paid off our debt. And then we started taking a look at all the other areas that we were blowing our money that wasn't on a credit card, right? It was just money that was coming out of our bank account. And I'm going to see if you can guess, Paul, what do you think was the biggest expense outside of like a mortgage?
Right. Eating out.
Boom.
Eating out.
Oh, we were spending about $1,000 a month eating out.
Oh, yeah.
And that was because that was during the time. You remember when DoorDash became popular, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right during COVID.
Yes.
And we were DoorDashing everything.
Oh, I knew we were in trouble when my son DoorDashed a Coke. I'm like, what? What is going on?
We weren't that bad.
Yeah. No, I freaked out. But anyways, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we knew right then and there that we had to, if we wanted to make any significant change with our debt, that we had to change the way we were spending our money on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm telling you, I was going to Starbucks 5 days a week.
Yeah.
You know
That's
what I mean?
Danielle's
and
thing.
so, yeah, it's like let's
hope she's not here.
But and so we gave ourselves, we didn't completely cut it out. Dave Ramsey would tell you, don't do that. Cut all that out. If you have debt, you don't need to spend money eating out. And it's like, we're a growing family on opposite schedules. Like we need to have some wiggle room for convenience.
For sure.
And so, we gave ourselves a limit. I think we set it to like 200 or 250 a month or whatever it was. So it was like a quarter of what we were spending.
Right.
And so that gave us the rest of that we were spending on eating out to go towards our debt. And we were extremely intentional about that.
Yeah. Were both you and your husband, I know you were, was your husband on board with this? Did he resist a little bit? I mean, have you ever worked with a family where like the spouse resists?
Oh, yes. It is hard. Fortunately for me, my husband was actually the one that came to me. I knew, because I was the one who was in charge of our finances. Like I knew that we needed to make the change, but I didn't know how to approach it to him at the time.
Right.
And so he came to me and was like, hey, like, I think we need to. And when he said, I was like, yeah, we do. And I was like, let's go.
Yeah. What about like people that are denial about it? I'm just going to throw myself under the bus. I got our Amazon bill and it was $1,000 one month. And I did. And when I say I lost it, right, I didn't really lose it, but that's when I went, hey, here's $1,000 bill. And it turned out 650 of it was mine. And I didn't even realize this. I mean, when you work with families, is someone in denial like me? Do you hear an echo, by the way? Or is that just me over here?
I don't hear an echo.
Okay, perfect. I can deal with it. Or is that just me? Does that happen in a lot of families where someone's in total denial about how much they spend?
It does happen. And that is the hard part about finances is you have to, at some point, be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And really kind of hone in on what the challenges are. And here's the truth. For a majority of people, the challenges are the same across the board. They just vary based on their income level, right? Mm-hmm. It's debt. It's not knowing where you're spending your money, not paying attention, not having clarity or intention in how you're spending your money.
Yeah.
And not having a clear savings strategy in place. Like those are the 3 biggest pain points for most people.
Right.
And so if you can be honest with yourself that, hey, something's not working with how we are managing our money right now. Right. You might not know what that is, but it's just that admitting, right? Admitting that you have
First step,
a problem.
Right? Yeah, there it is. Yeah. So you admit the problem, and sorry if I'm going off script here. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
I just do that. So now you have a family that knows they have a problem. Literally, what is the first step they should do? Like they're listening to this, they're going, yeah, I can relate to this. You know, what's the first step that they do?
Yeah, what I always tell people to do is do an audit of your previous month's bank statements and credit card statements.
Right.
And what you're looking for is not necessarily like your day-to-day bills, like your utilities and your, your rent or your mortgage and, gas and things like that. Those things, they are going to be what they're going to be. And you do need to understand those numbers at some point, in the next phase, but to really like hone in on what the pain points are,
Right.
is look at all of the other expenses.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about the like stopping at Starbucks to get your coffee each day, right? Stopping at the convenience store to get a quick snack, stopping by Target or scrolling on Amazon and clicking buy, these $10 purchases, $5 purchases, $8 purchases, they add up really quickly.
Yeah.
And so go through your statements and basically highlight anything that's a non-necessity, right? I can survive without this. I don't need to go to Starbucks because I have coffee at home, right?
Yeah.
So, and then total that up and see what that number is. And then ask yourself, am I comfortable with spending X amount of money on stuff each month or each pay period, whatever you choose, and that's keeping me from all of these other things.
Yeah. That's a great exercise. I can, when you're coaching people, I can see my wife and I wish she was here, but she's taking care of the grandson right now and we're late and all that great stuff. She, what she views as important and what I view as important are two different things, right? Like, for example, groceries have now replaced eating out for us. Groceries have become so expensive, and it's those add-on pieces like all this fruit we buy and stuff like that. That's so like oranges. A bag of oranges was like $25. I couldn't believe it. But when you're buying for a house of 6 people, those things really add up, and it's getting them under control.
Yeah. And so the other thing that I focus on with my clients is, because that's a great point, is you can have a couple that has different perspectives on what's important and what is of value, right? We all have a different definition of what value is. Yeah. And so I always like to have it's usually just like a quick little exercise where we go through this list of values. Like, what do you as individuals, what are your top 3? What do you value the most out of like all of these and it's a bunch of categories. It ranges from things like religion to wealth or health and wellness and things like that. So there's all like a list of like probably like 30, 40 different values, right? And what's interesting is oftentimes there's usually at least one value that lines up with both of them.
Sure.
It's usually I've never had a couple where they just had 0 values in line, right? Because generally you marry somebody who has similar values to you, right? Most of the time. And so it's like, okay, now we can focus the spending plan around this value that's in common, but then still also make space for what the other person finds important as well. So for example, with my husband and I, my husband is a WWE fan.
Is he really?
Huge wrestling fan.
That's amazing. Okay.
And so, I mean, we went to WrestleMania last year in Vegas. We were going to go this year, but
I love him. That's hilarious.
It's so expensive. So, but like, that's not my thing. Right. I'm like, it's not really, but we make space. Like, we have a savings plan in place. It's like, okay, we have, we'll set aside X amount of money each year for these wrestling events. So my husband can go to them guilt-free. Right. Yeah. And then on the flip side, it's like, I love yoga, and yoga, and I want to do yoga in studio. Like, I don't want to be at home doing yoga in front of a YouTube video. Like, that's just not, it just doesn't do it for me. He's like, I want to be in studio and I want to be able to go whenever I want.
Yeah.
And so we pay for me to go to yoga each month. Right. And so, but we wouldn't have been able to get to that point if we didn't clear out the rest of the junk, the rest of the stuff that we were spending money on that didn't add value. Like, yoga adds so much value to my life. Yeah. Going to wrestling events adds so much value to my husband's life. So we don't need all this other little stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point. I never thought of that. So that's part of your coaching, is where you ask people what their values are so they can be very focused on where they're spending their extra money from. Because you're right. I love like surfing and stuff like that. My boards, they get expensive. But it's something I absolutely love, and it helps me. And to cut that out of my life for a budgeting, it wouldn't work. Right? It just wouldn't work. So I love how you do that. Now, when you budget for this, do you guys have separate checking accounts each month you put money into? How do you keep tabs of the money?
So I am a nerd at heart, and in my profession. So I use an app called You Need a Budget. Now, I have had maybe 1 to 2 clients utilize this app, because it is, if you don't have, like, if you're not a numbers person, or you don't have, like, if you're not used to like balancing a checkbook and things like that, right? Which most of us don't balance checkbooks anymore because we don't really carry around checkbooks.
Right.
Then it could be too in the weeds for people, right? Because not everybody's a numbers person. You know, I can show my husband my beautiful spreadsheets and my analyzing and all of this, and he just, like, his eyes glaze over. He's like, I don't care. And it's so
love him. It's like, it's great.
So, I could use a budgeting app and all day long. I love it. I'm in mine every single day just to kind of make sure we're on track with our goals. But there is a way that you can set up your system to where you don't have to track it by every transaction and, you know, spend all that time on it. And it's what I call it's a 50-30-20 rule.
Okay.
And you usually have one checking account that's designated to your bills, right? And then this is where all of your paychecks get deposited into this bills account, right? Now, in order to make this transition work, you have to know what your total monthly bills are. So there is a little bit of tracking that has to be done in the beginning, usually over the course of like a month or two, just to really get this like percentage down, because it is a percentage based system. So I say 50-30-20 because that's the goal. For some people, it's like 60% of our money stays in the bills account. And then we have 40% that we can transfer out to spending and savings. So it's that part's going to differ from couple to couple, just based on your income and what expenses you have. So basically you have your bills account, all of your paychecks get deposited into the bills account. All of your bills are auto drafted from that bills account. Okay. So after you kind of analyze that for a month or two and you see, okay, our bills are, like I said, 60% of our total income each month on average. Okay. So then, you know, okay, 60% of of each paycheck is going to stay in this bills account. And then you decide, okay, how much am I going to transfer to a spending account and how much am I going to transfer to savings? Gotcha. So the goal would be that you are transferring, I would say, at least 10%. I would encourage people to do 10% minimum to savings. But, you know, if you're just starting out and you're not quite comfortable with that, you know, start at 5% and then work your way up. And then the rest goes into a spending account. So you have your bills checking account, a spending checking account, and that's the only account that you have a debit card for, right? You don't have a debit card for the bills account because you don't want to accidentally spend the money out of there, because that's right. And then you have your savings account. And so this way it's not as much tracking over the long term.
Right.
And you might have to do some adjusting here and there. I always, encourage people to because how utilities go up
Sure.
incrementally. Just the cost of living goes up. And so you do have to kind of adjust it periodically. But that really works for people who are like, I don't want to track every $5 transaction, or, I don't want to have to say, okay, I went to Target and I spent $200, but $100 was for groceries and $50 I spent on my kids. And then $50 I spent on home supplies. And then because I love doing stuff like that, just because I get to analyze everything at the end of the year.
Awesome.
But
You're awesome. That is like too much for me. I'll do like 2 days. I have a question for you though, going back. So in your wallet, do you carry around just the one debit card, or do you carry credit cards and stuff like that as well?
We do not utilize credit cards on a regular basis. The only thing that we use our credit cards for is for travel. And so, outside of like business credit cards and things like that. We use our anytime that we go away from our normal day to day. Right. So if we take like a little weekend trip, or we take like a full on vacation, we use our credit cards during that time. But with the caveat to that is we always have the money sitting in our savings for that. Like we've planned ahead of time for that trip. And so once we get back, then I just pay the card off.
Now, so you have the first account for the checking, that's everything's deposited and the bills are paid. Now, which one, I think you said it, but I want to just ask you this. Which do you establish first, the savings or the spending account? What I've heard, and I would love your input on this, is that you always do the savings and you. Are we back? That was the strangest.
There we go.
That was like, okay. So let me know. Tell me if I have to go back, but I have a hard time here with internet or what? Give me a second. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's what happens when you have 6 kids in the house too. They all look at the internet.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Go ahead. So do you start with the savings or do you start with the spending? There you go.
Right. Okay. So you mean like, what do you do first?
Yeah. Like for example,
I use the theory from Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Okay.
He says in that book to always pay yourself first.
Yes.
So what does that mean? To me, for us, that's a couple things. Is first and foremost, anything that I do with our paychecks when they come in, I'm always taking a certain percentage and putting it into savings. That's first things first. Before I allocate anything to bills, before I do anything like that, we're in this process of like money goes into savings first. And then 2, we also pay ourselves individually. So like my husband, we do anywhere from 2.5% to 5% per paycheck that as individuals we can spend on whatever we want. That's awesome. And we do that because it just kind of helps, like, because there's going to be things that I want that my husband's like, why is this in the budget? And vice versa. Right. So at least they don't. And so, so you could have your individual accounts for that. We don't, because it's, it's like $100, $200 every paycheck. It's not like a substantial amount of money. Right. So I just track that within our budget, but you could have your own separate accounts, or you could take that out in cash, right? Each pay period. So those 2 things. And then I also make sure that our investments are funded with that paycheck. And then you worry about the actual spending portion, right? Just the random, whether it's groceries or home decor or miscellaneous stuff, like whatever it is.
It's wild. So by the way, everybody, I can see the comments. If you have questions, feel free to ask a question. But tell us though, so you went from 100,000+ in debt, right? And then to now you have no debts and you guys are paying yourselves. with essentially the same amount of income. True. I mean, essentially, right? Same profession.
Yeah.
What were the growing pains? I mean, that must have took a tremendous amount of, that's hard. That must have been really
Yeah.
hard.
No, it was. And I will be honest, we made the mistake of going at it extremely hard in the beginning. And I
Mhm.
mean, like, my husband, the first year, worked almost 1,200 hours of overtime.
Oh,
Yeah. So it, like, we
okay.
went hardcore. I never recommend that to clients
No.
because it could be a relationship ender if
Yeah.
you're not careful. It got really, really rough for a while, especially because he was still on graveyards that first year. And so he was on graveyards and then working overtime on top of that. So, you can imagine his sleep wasn't the best. And so, but so I always say, just, pace yourself, be comfortable with the fact that it might take you 3-4 years to pay off your debt,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that you have to put your life on pause.
Right.
I try to work with my clients to figure out a strategy where you're paying off your debt consistently, but you're still able to live your life and still enjoy your money in the present,
Right.
right? We don't want to keep putting off
Yeah.
joy and fun into some time in the future because that,
Totally.
you could hit a wall and just throw your hands up and say, this isn't for me. Like, well, this isn't even worth it because I'm not having any fun. So that is one thing. And then two, this one hit us really hard because we weren't expecting it. As soon as we paid off our debt, we were in a state of like momentum for 3-4 years.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as we paid off our debt, we got so complacent and almost lost all intention.
Interesting.
Like there was like, because we were just so focused and so focused and so focused for so long.
Right.
And then we're like, hey, we're debt free. We don't have to worry about this anymore. And we lost sight of what our goals were and what our vision was and what our values were, and started kind of down that road of just like spending everything. We didn't go back into debt.
Yeah.
But we also didn't have any more money in our savings account at the end of the year than we did in the beginning. So, and so that was really interesting. And we had to kind of like rein ourselves in and kind of like take a good hard look in the mirror and be like, hey, like there's more to your finances than just paying off your debt.
I believe that because, being a lender for 20 years, I'm telling you, I have certain clients over the years that they'll refinance, will pay off all their debts. And then like a year and a half later, we're doing it again. And it's not that they don't make enough money. There must be something else going on in terms of just buying feels good to some people, including me, by the way. I like to buy stuff.
It does.
And it's kind of, I don't want to call it an addiction because I'm not trying to label anything, but it becomes a problem, right? I mean, next thing you know, you have all this stuff. You're like, why do I have all this stuff?
Yeah. And what
Right?
it is, and what I've learned working with law enforcement, because of, the particular stressors of their job and the long hours but this is true for everybody. This isn't just specific to first responders. This is true of everybody. It is really prevalent in the first responder arena is we use money as a way to control our nervous system and regulate our nervous system. I should say regulate our nervous system and decompress. We work hard throughout the week. Life is hectic. Things are busy. It starts with the convenience of, going through the drive-through really quick to just, appease the kids, right? Whatever you can do to make your life easier outside of work. That's a form of trying to decompress and regulate your nervous system. So that's what happens to a lot of us is money is very much tied to our emotions, and we use it. I call it that quick dopamine hit.
Totally.
Right? So kind of like a drug, so it is kind of like an addiction. It's that quick dopamine hit. But what I tell people is like what you are doing is you are trading your future peace for just a little bit of peace in the present. Right? You just get a little bit of peace in the present, but then future you is going to be a little stressed out.
Yeah.
And then the next day, future year is going to be a little more stressed out. And the next day, a little more stressed out. Right.
Yeah.
And that's just it. So you have to really figure out a way to break that cycle and recognize when you're spending money. Am I spending this because I have a plan to spend this money and I'm doing it because there's a purpose to it? Or is it just, I'm just using it to regulate because I had a stressful day and I just want to buy myself something nice?
Oh, I can totally relate to that.
Easy dinner for the night.
Totally relate to that. Totally relate to that. I think one of the biggest takeaways I've gotten from this talk today, of many with you, but the big one today was the values. Because I hear you saying, hey, it's okay if something's important to you, spend money on it. But what happens to me and maybe other people, that's why I'm bringing this up, is I fall into this trap where all of a sudden I'm chasing this shiny object and I'm getting that dopamine hit. The next thing you know, I have a Harley and I love my Harley, but it's sitting in the garage and I haven't ridden it in 4 months. That's the truth. Mm-hmm. I was smiling ear to ear when I first got that thing, but there it is. So yeah. I have to come up with some values here. What would you say to people that you're first sitting with that, you know, are listening to this and saying, well, that's great. Your husband made all this money. That's why you guys got out of debt. My family's different. We're on a fixed budget. You know, we haven't been successful before. How can we be successful now? You know, what would you say to people that are struggling they start the budget process and then they fail or fall short, I should say?
Yeah. So, and it could be any number of things, but you know, I would like to sit with people. I like to sit with people and really take a look at what the numbers are. Anytime I sign a client, they're always submitting their income and expense information to me ahead of time, so I can look over it and pick out the areas that I think would be the most bang for their buck, like the areas that need the most change. Right. And it is harder when you do have a fixed income, but it's not impossible. It's just you have to, when you are on a fixed income, you do have to make some tougher decisions because you don't have the capacity to increase your income to kind of keep things a little bit more intact the way that they are. And oftentimes what that looks like is, you know, if there's a vehicle that is a high debt vehicle, it looks like you're selling the vehial, right? Or we're trading it in for something that's half the cost. Right. You might still have the more or the loan on it, but it's going to be half the size that it is. Right. And so those are some of the tough decisions that you know, and it's not like I don't come into a session with a client and be like, hey, guess what? You got to sell your car. It's like, no, that usually comes as like, the first session that I have with clients, it's a 2-hour session. It's like a intense deep dive. Okay. Those types of decisions don't usually come until the back end, once I get more of a feel for what the actual problem is. But that's usually what it boils down to, is just making really tough decisions. Right. And sometimes just looking outside of the box too, because for some people, you know, it might be that they do have the ability to increase their income some, right? Whether it's looking for a new position outside of where they're at, right? I've had clients do that where it's like, you know, this job isn't paying me what I want. It's like, okay, well, what else? What's out there, right? Could you find something that pays a little bit more? And so there's always something that you can do to kind of change your situation a little bit.
That's powerful. That's powerful. What does it look like? So it's a 2-hour session with you. Can you walk us through that? Because I'm going to send this out to my whole database, people I work with that are buying homes. The biggest thing when people are buying homes today is they kind of just like you, they walk into like for example, we work with a lot of nurses, paramedics, firefighters, and stuff like that. So they go from being in that school to making, if they're married to another paramedic or a fire, you know, whatnot, to making over $300,000 a year. It's a huge jump for them, right? And then, but spending $5,000-$6,000 on a mortgage is overwhelming to them. What do you do to help people kind of navigate all this stuff? First of all, I want them to not buy that big truck that they normally buy when they first get their job.
Please. I keep telling agencies, I'm like, bring me in for new hire orientation so I can tell all these young bucks. Don't go for the big truck right off the bat. Like, I don't care if you want to get the big truck 5-10 years from now when you've saved up for it, but like, don't get it right off the bat.
I mean,
it's painful, especially nowadays. They're $1,000.
It's $1,000 payment.
$1,000 payment. Yeah.
Yes.
And I've had clients where both partners have $1,000 vehicle payment, and it's just like, oh yeah. Oh boy. So but yeah, so essentially what a session looks like with me is I like to spend the first like 30 to 45 minutes just kind of like feeling things out and kind of talking about like how they ended up in the spot that they were in, whatever the challenge is, and really just kind of dig into that aspect. It's not as much about the numbers right in the beginning, because finances are not like, your money is not just all about numbers. Most of it is to do with your behaviors and your emotions and your beliefs around money. I always like to ask and get a feel for what, as individuals, they learned about money growing up, like within their household, because how their parents talked about money is going to directly affect how they view and approach money, for the most part. And so like understanding all of that helps me to really walk them through the actual financial piece. Because there's a lot of things. It's while most of us have the same like specific money challenges in terms of debt, spending, and like lack of savings, everything else that influences that is so different from person to person. All of our experiences are so different from person to person. And so, and all of that plays into why you're in the financial situation that you're in.
Yeah. Not to put you on the spot, but do you have any examples of some people's, stories they tell themselves about money?
Well, especially working with first responders is, I deserve this.
Okay.
That's the biggest one. I deserve this. And my husband still to this day will say that sometimes, and I'll be like, you what? Like, you want it? Yes. You want it? Yes.
Yeah.
Can you have it? Yes, you can have it. We also need to plan for it. But that's what it is like, you work so hard. And I think that as a society, we haven't taught our kids growing up about money. And so they just assume that what this American dream is so easily attainable. Like, I'm entitled to that. Right. And the unfortunate truth is, the reality is like, we're not entitled to it. You have to make smart decisions in order to get to that American dream.
Absolutely.
And, here I am, like, I'm 40 years old, and like, we barely just figured this out. So like, that's not a diss on anybody. No. That's just the truth, is most of us did not learn about personal finance as a kid, or even as a young adult. My degree's in financial management. I didn't take a personal finance course because it's not required.
Yeah. I remember when I first got out of high school, my buddy got a credit card, and it was amazing how fast he racked it up. And he didn't realize how fast it went from zero to over $1,000, which to us back then, that was huge. Huge. Hey, we're actually coming to time here. We have so I want to respect you, Rebecca, because you mentioned 8:00.
Yes.
As we start winding down, I want to encourage you, if anybody has any questions, either put them in the chat and I can bring you up. You can ask her yourself. But how does somebody get a hold of you? And by the way, I'm going to send it out. Like, set up is there a way to set up an appointment with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I can send you a link. I always start with a consultation call, to make sure that whatever your challenge is, that I feel like I'm going to be able to help. And then if I feel like it's something that might be a little bit more out of my league, if it's more, like for example, like if you are having issues with your student loans and you want to know about the different student loan free, and it's like, that's not my area of expertise, right? But I will try to like pair you with somebody who is more knowledgeable in that area. But when you want to do like debt payoff and all of that, I'm your girl.
You're a girl. You're the one. What about like people that sign up with those companies that they pay the company to settle the debts for them? What's your thought process on those?
Exactly like you said about how people will take out a second mortgage or refinance to get their equity out. The same thing happens with debt consolidation companies. Is what happens is these debt consolidation companies come in and they consolidate all of your debt. You've never addressed the issue as to why you went into debt in the first place.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you're like, cool, this is a manageable debt payment.
Yeah.
And all of my credit cards have a zero balance on them.
Let's do it.
And so it's the same. And even too, similarly, I've seen it with people who have had bankruptcies as well. They go bankrupt and then they just wind up back in debt because they're not addressing the real like behaviors behind how they get into that situation in the first place.
I see patterns, with credit scores and stuff like that. And the theory, what I've noticed is that this is not a blanket statement. I've seen a few successes, but if someone has a 560 credit score today, they're probably going to have the same credit score in 2 years. There's something deeper going on. And I'm not implying that anything negative at all, but it's something to really look at and uncover. Because I know these people want the better credit scores. They want to buy the house, but they keep finding themselves in that same position. And I'm not sure how they got there.
Yeah. And it's, it is a combination of, credit card companies are inherently predatory because of the fact that their interest rates are so high. You have the people who are like, well, I pay off my balance every month. Okay, that's great. But how many people don't?
Right.
And they're paying a 30% interest.
That's wild.
On whatever that balance is. That's insane.
Yeah, that is insane.
Like you think about that, your debt, your debt will double every 2.5 years.
Yeah.
If you don't come up with
2.5 years.
2.5 years at a 30% interest rate. Yeah. If you're just making minimum payments, you will never bring that balance down at a 30% interest rate if you're just making minimum payments. No. You'll be paying on it for the rest of your life.
Gotcha.
For credit cards.
Yeah, for credit cards.
For credit cards.
No, because what I see now is people with like 2% first mortgages and they've already taken a HELOC. They don't want to get rid of that 2% rate, but they're sacrificing everything else. Right? Does that make sense? And it's a tricky thing. I really appreciate your time, Rebecca. We can talk on and on about this. I'm going to send everybody out your information. We have a few people on. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. If not, I just thank you, Rebecca, for first of all rescheduling with me from last year.
Yeah, no problem.
And then the day of, I'm texting you like, I don't know if you're going to let me out. But it's been such a pleasure.
I work with first responders. I'm used to the last minute switch ups. Okay.
Right. And we should work out something. I would really love to figure out a flow to with new home buyers to get them to create that budget. The sooner we can get people in that budget, the better they're going to be.
Yeah. So I agree. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you very much. And
thank you, Paul.
Again, we'll talk soon.
All right. Have a